So hi, everyone. I'm Katie Pfohl. I am the curator of modern contemporary art at the New Orleans Museum of Art, and I'm so excited to have a chance to talk with the amazing New Orleans-based artist Cristina Molina today, virtually. We just worked together on an amazing performance piece at the museum called Under Three Things that, in the wake of the crisis we're all facing, we just made into this really interesting virtual YouTube tour that all of you can experience on YouTube, NOMA's YouTube. So please join us for this talk about Cristina's work and this project, and go check out the performance for yourself. It's really amazing. Hi, Cristina.
Hi.
How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Good. Really excited to have this chance to talk with you and think through, I think, a lot of the questions that your performance asked from the beginning, and also, you know, what it means to transfer an experience like the one that you created online now. But I thought we could maybe just start by hearing a little bit from you about the performance Under Three Things as it existed in the museum's galleries.
Sure. So the original performance, Under Three Things, was a whispering tour that I designed based on 10 works of contemporary art that were part of the show Ear to the Ground, Earth and Element in Contemporary Art. And so I chose 10 works as a narrative to write about, and I incorporated elements from the artist's biography and elements of the actual work that I had read about. And then I designed a tour is a kind of a strong word, more like a narrative about each of the works. And I imagined myself as the character of Persephone from Greek mythology, emerging from the underground into the museum and leading guests through this tour. And the whole tour was delivered via whisper, and it was one-on-one. So I invited participants to walk arm in arm with me, and I would whisper the whole narrative into their ear. So it was a very intimate experience, and it was a way to really slow down and contemplate the work from this narrative perspective.
Yeah, I have to say, you know, in the moments after, you know, in many ways the whole world shut down and NOMA shut down, this tour was really one of the first things that I thought about when I thought about what it could mean for us to think about presenting art in this virtual realm. I mean, I remember both experiencing the tour myself, going through this performance with you, and also seeing and hearing from people that it meant so much to have this really intimate, personal, one-on-one encounter with you as an artist as well as the artwork, and was somewhat surprised but really thrilled when you agreed to, in the course of just a couple days, create a version of that for people online as well. And I wondered if you could talk a little bit about, you know, what it means to take an experience like that and put it online, and, you know, some of what your intention is in sharing that with people now.
Well, I think it comes down to the question of access, right? And so initially I was really delighted by the idea that people who came in, you know, it was first come, first serve, and they only had access to it if they were there, and they could experience the work in this kind of surprising and spontaneous way. But I think now, you know, we're thinking about how to still bring art and culture and music and creativity to people in a time of isolation and social distancing. More people are staying at home. So I think that part of our role as cultural producers is shifting. And so it's a great opportunity to be able to move the work into an online setting. I don't think it's exactly the same experience, but what I'm hoping is that that viewers and participants can get an idea of what it was like, and that maybe they could connect with the work in some way still.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, you know, the idea of how we can create a sense of real personal connection through like Zoom, which we're talking on now, or
Right.
YouTube, or all of these things, it's something that we're all struggling with, right? Like trying to
Yeah.
figure out both how to use these technologies that a lot of us haven't used, but also like what it means to rely on these as your kind of connection to others and your connection to art and your connection to cultural institutions like museums as well. And I know, a lot of your work really has in many ways used digital technology as a way to create these intimate experiences. And I know a lot of your own work as both a teacher as well as an artist has really been thinking about what these new digital technologies have to teach us about what it means to come together both in person as well as digitally. And I guess I would be curious to hear from you a little bit, like, what can we look to at this moment in terms of either artists or projects or ideas? How do you think that we can look to art as a tool for how to encounter and engage with this new world that we're living in a meaningful way?
Yeah, I think first of all, in terms of our ability to use technology now, I know that it's not completely accessible to everybody. Some of my students, for example, don't necessarily have a computer at home or a way to access the internet. So that's not completely 100% accessible, but I do think that, I've been thinking a lot about the like plagues at the turn of the century and how that must have been so isolating for people. So at least we have technology uh, like these platforms like Zoom and Google Hangouts to be able to connect with one another and still have conversations, still experience works of art, and music and opera and all of the kind of initiatives that I think cultural institutions are trying to bring forward. So it's a reminder that while it's not a replacement, it's a reminder that people are still working hard to bring joy, beauty, um, distribution of ideas to people, and that we can still engage in these ideas and in these movements to inspire us, because art, art does many things, but I think one of the things it does is it reminds us of our potential as humans, and it reminds us that life is worth living, and it reminds us of the beauty and the potential of our collective voices. So I think that that's really important to keep and to not forget, that even though we're going through a really hard time, the power of art is to transcend the spirit. I know that sounds kind of cheesy, but it is so
We're
important.
in a cheesy, that's what we need, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's really valuable to remember that, and I think that's what those technologies can offer. I think too, this is a kind of a quirky observation, but in my work, going back to like the tour and putting it online, I think a lot about ASMR, which is, I don't know if you're familiar with that phenomenon, but it's auto sensory meridian response. It might be a made up experience, but I'm really into these kind of YouTube sensation artists who, like tap on their keyboard or like slurp up a milkshake or uncrack peanuts. I think that there's potential for sensorial experiences that can only happen online. So I'm curious if now artists are thinking about that more than ever, and maybe seeing some movements that are quarantine ASMR specific.
Yeah, and I think, too, thinking about the opportunities that we have in this moment of isolation that don't exist at other times, right? I mean, for me, I took the tour with you in person, arm in arm, and it was one of the most moving experiences that I've had in an art museum. And I also worked with you to put it online. But in watching it for the first time after we put together a digital tour, it was honestly kind of shocking, like to feel that closely connected through my computer to you and to your voice, and to feel that sense of connection to the ideas that you're proposing. And I do think, part of it has to be like, how can we use what's happening right now as an opportunity to work and to create different kinds of experiences for people, for sure. I mean, I think, it's interesting reflecting now on some of the goals of the exhibition Ear to the Ground to begin with, which were about thinking about the ways that artists were turning to nature as this tool, not just to think about ecology and preservation and climate change, but also really to, you know, think through ways that nature can teach us new forms of human connection, new forms of observation, and new ways of kind of being attuned to the realities around us. And it feels like in many ways the project that you created for the show was really about that. It was about how do you listen to someone who's whispering, and how do you amplify that sound and make it into something that can exist for many people all across the world. So I really feel, you know, like it was a sort of strange kismet that you created this project that seems to me to speak to what people want and need right now. I mean, my 3-year-old kid sat and watched it like 4 times back to back. She heard it and came in from the other room and watched it. And I feel like, I think people are really going to experience like this kind of almost intense form of connection to others through just the fact that we haven't been for so long, to hear that kind of close, that physical proximity that you've really created across distance is really something pretty cool.
Well, thank you, Katie. I mean, I think if I can keep a 3-year-old's attention for 5 minutes, that's a real honor. So, I mean, that says a lot about the work. And of course, everything you're saying about the work is, I'm very grateful to all of your observations.
So if people are going to now kind of go to Noma's YouTube channel and check out this experience for themselves, can you tell people sort of what they should do, where they should be to have the kind of like ideal experience of this work, how to set themselves up to be as wowed by it as I was?
Yeah, I think if you can help it, being in a quiet space, maybe at nighttime when it's dark and your screen is illuminated and it's kind of intimate, I think that would be an ideal setting. And to remember too that in the imagery, to try to look at the work that's pictured in the imagery, because a lot of the narrative is connected to what's being shown in the imagery. I think that would be really important, and trying to see perhaps how what I'm saying is connecting to the images that you see before you. And hopefully to come with some openness. It's, you know, I think that we're trained as a generation of YouTube watchers to kind of fade out after about 2 minutes of listening or watching a video. So to kind of know the time investment and to relax into the idea that there's a little bit of a time investment, not too much. It's like 5 to 7 minutes.
Yeah, 5 minutes, 7 minutes. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Well, thank you so much, Cristina. I really feel like so grateful to have had this performance as this thing to put together that I hope, you know, in many ways reaches across a lot of the divides that we're all facing and struggling with. And I'm excited for people to get to experience something virtually that was so amazing in person, and I think really resonates with this moment. So thanks so much for your work on putting this together, and please everyone go and check it out.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity. I'm thrilled.
Thank you. Bye. Bye.
Bye.